Let's talk about how to stop overeating. Back when I was 222 pounds, I really thought I was not overeating. I looked at my husband and I saw that he weighed 130 pounds and I knew that I weighed 222 pounds and I thought we ate the same amount. I thought, I'm not overeating. It's just life's not fair. But on the weight loss journey, I learned that I was wrong about that. In fact, I was overeating habitually. In the course of losing 80 pounds, I learned that there were two kinds of overeating. There was one kind of overeating, which was really obvious. It was that, you feel uncomfortably full, you feel miserable after a meal, and you've done it. But there's another kind of overeating that's more subtle. In fact, when you're doing this kind of overeating, you don't even realize that you're eating too much at all. The good news is both of these types of overeating can be overcome, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how. So the first concrete step that you can take in your quest to stop overeating is to stop distracted eating. So what this means is that whenever you sit down to eat, you first create a quiet environment and you get rid of all distractions. Now, this is not going to be perfect because you're going to have some level of distraction in your life, but there are some things that you have control over that you can get rid of. The most important ones are anything with a screen. So your TV, you need to turn it off. Music, turn it off. Your phone, put it in a different room. The idea is that you sit down and you have one task, and that is to eat. This also means no eating while you're working, no eating while you're reading, no eating while you're doing something else. You're just focused on the food. And if that sounds like something you don't want to do, then welcome to the club, because I was that type of person. I wanted to multitask. I love to multitask. But one thing I realized was that many times I was eating while distracted, and that distraction was leading me to eat a lot more than what I realized. What I started to see over time was that when I just sat down to eat without any distraction, a lot of times I would just eat the right amount. In other words, I would stop and I would feel full, but not overly full. On the other hand, those times where I would sit down and eat, in front of the television, I would end up feeling miserable. And I would think, why do I feel so bad? And I would realize it was because I was eating so much. Now, the thing about this is when you get rid of all these distractions and you sit down to the food, you're going to be basically left with your food and your thoughts. And this is uncomfortable, but it's also a really good opportunity to learn about yourself when you're eating. Because for those of us who have struggled with our weight, there are issues around food and there are uncomfortable things, like things we remember that we don't want to think about, or, like negative experiences we've had with people about our weight or about our eating. And all these things can come up when you're just sitting there eating and not being distracted by anything. But it's really the only way to work through these things. The second thing that you can do to help yourself stop overeating is to slow down. Now, not everybody struggles with eating too fast, but I am a fast eater. I always have been. I just am. That's just my natural kind of tendency is to do that. So if you're the type of person also who eats quickly, know that this is not a good thing when it comes to, trying to eat the right amount, because you're eating so fast, you're not letting your body tell you that you've had enough. Now you may think, well, it doesn't really matter how fast they eat, but consider this. For a person at a normal weight, it takes about 10 minutes for the message to reach your brain that you're full. But for obese people, it takes 20 minutes. So you have this longer window of time where you're sitting there eating. And if you're eating fast, the damage is going to be greater. But how do you actually eat slower? It can be really difficult to do, surprisingly difficult. One thing that really helped me was to learn that I could just fast instead of eat if I really didn't have time to sit down and take my time with the food. But even if you've carved out plenty of time, it's still easy to eat too fast. One thing that has really helped me is to get into the habit of putting down my fork after each bite. That can really slow down your pace if you get in the habit of doing that. The key is to actually remember and to do it. Another thing that can help is to just try to chew your food more. I am really bad about this. I tend to just, pop a bite in my mouth, chew it 1 or 2 times and then swallow it. But if you can get in the habit of taking your time and just chewing it a little bit more, I mean, not to the point of being ridiculous because then the food tastes gross, but, just getting in the habit of being a little bit slower, that can add up over time. And I found this to just be a slow process. The process of slowing down is really slow for me. I've made improvements, but it's really about just making baby steps in the right direction. Now, the third thing you can do is to listen to that voice that tells you when you've had enough. So once you've gotten rid of all the distractions and you've started to take your time with the food, you will start to better hear that little voice that says, okay, you've had enough. Now, the key is once you hear that voice, to then actually obey it, which I had trouble with. You know, I would know like, okay, I've had enough, but there was this thing in my brain going on like, well, but I'm afraid I'm going to be hungry later if I don't keep eating. So I need to eat some more. And so I wouldn't obey that voice. And then I would end the meal uncomfortably full yet again. So what I started to do was to then negotiate with myself. And I said, okay, you know, like, yeah, I know that I'm thinking that I need to stop, but I want to have like, you know, let's say another roll. Okay, well, you know, at first I would say, okay, I'm going to try having the roll. And then I'd say, okay, well, I felt, you know, miserable after that. So the next time I had that feeling, I'd say, well, I'm going to try having half a roll. So yeah, I was still eating past that point of, you know, knowing I was full, but it was a little bit less. So I just kept baby stepping that. And I would say, okay, like, instead of that, I'm going to have like maybe, you know, 5 bites more. And so I would, you know, eat a little bit more. And then I would notice like, okay, how do I feel now? And I would think, well, you know, like I feel better than I would have otherwise, but, you know, I still ate a little too much. And so then, you know, the next time that would happen, I would say, okay, I'm going to try just 4 bites and then just 3 bites and then just 2. And eventually I got to the point where quite often I was obeying that voice where it's like, okay, I know that I need to stop. And so I would stop. And really focusing on that feeling that I had afterwards to really pay attention. Like, do I feel good after I eat more than I feel like I should at the meal? Or do I feel better when I stop when I know that I should? And once you know that, then it's a lot easier to stop. Once you start doing those 3 things, when you're focusing only on the food, not doing anything else except for eating, when you're slowing down your eating, and when you actually make yourself stop when you know you need to stop, then you've got that problem under control. That obvious kind of overeating will go away. You'll be able to know because you will feel good after a meal. You'll stand up from the table and you'll think, I ate just the right amount. But it's still easy to do the other kind of overeating, that subtle kind of overeating, which is just eating too much every day, even if you don't feel like you are. So how do you deal with that? Well, the first thing you can do is to educate yourself about how much you're actually eating. The thing is, we're all pretty inaccurate when it comes to knowing how much food we're eating. In fact, the average obese person thinks they are consuming 1,300 calories less than what they're actually consuming. And that can really hinder your progress on the weight loss journey. The thing is, calories add up really fast. You can eat your entire daily allotment of calories in just one meal. The general recommendation out there for women who are wanting to lose weight is to eat 1,500 calories a day. You can get that at a single sitting at McDonald's if you order a double quarter pounder with cheese, a large fry, and a large Coke. Or if you go out to dinner at Olive Garden and order the tour of Italy. Again, you've gotten all of your calories just at one meal. But on the other hand, you might not do big meals, but you might graze all day. And grazing all day can do the same thing. You can end up eating 3,000 calories and not even realize it. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So how do you solve this problem? You can do this by keeping a food journal for a while to kind of see what you're actually consuming. And just by keeping the journal, you'll probably find that there are many different times during the day when you normally would have eaten where you won't eat because you don't want to have to write it down. But it can show you that the things that you're doing are really adding up over time. Another thing to be aware of when it comes to calories is that sometimes what you think of as a serving is not what the food label means as a serving. So for example, a quarter cup of cheese is not very much cheese, but that's one serving. So you might be putting several servings worth of cheese and sour cream on those nachos that you're eating, and you don't even realize how much that adds up to. But knowledge is power here. Once you know these things, then you know that, okay, you know, like I can't eat that much or I'm going to gain weight. And the last thing you can do to help yourself stop overeating is to weigh yourself and pay attention to what the scale is doing. Ultimately, you know, like weighing and measuring all of your food and trying to get really super accurate calorie counts is exhausting, and it drives me nuts personally. But what I found was just using the scale as my barometer was very easy. It showed me over time whether I was actually, overeating, which meant the scale would be moving up, or if I was eating the right amount to maintain, or if I was eating the right amount in order to lose. Because the truth is, there are some times when it's going to be really difficult to know, are you overeating or are you not? There are some meals that kind of make you feel overly full, but actually you're not overeating. It's just, they've got a lot of fiber in them. But the scale will let you know what's going on. And the good news here is that you don't have to be perfect when it comes to not overeating in order to successfully lose weight and to keep it off. Everybody has their days where they overdo it. They eat too much at a meal, or you're going to have times when you're going to still be distracted while you're eating. You're going to eat too fast. You're going to, eat too many calories at a meal. You're going to go out and, have a ton of calories at a Mexican restaurant. But at the end of the day, you can still lose weight and you can still maintain a healthy weight just by knowing these things about not doing this on a consistent, habitual basis. Try to be really patient with yourself and just know that it takes time to do these things. Think in terms of baby steps, getting a little bit better each time. Every time you sit down to a meal, it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to try and to improve. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that it helped you, and I'll see you in the next one.